Also, just separately, we do generally support the food packaging bill. So, but he was going to say that he promised Michelle, but but otherwise, most of our comments are focused on the drinking water bill. I just want to share with you what our process has been, what we've been doing, and why we've done it the way we have. I want to emphasize that RIDO takes PFAS very seriously, and we've been very diligent and working as quickly as we can to address this issue. But it is a process that takes time, but I think we've done a lot in the time we've spent on this. So what do we normally, or how are we handling this? According to Rhode Island law, we're supposed to develop drinking water regulations in accordance with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and any regulations related to that from EPA. And so they've set forth this process that we're following, where first we need to figure out, is it in our water? Determine, is it occurring in our water? We need to determine what is a safe level of PFAS in our water. We have to determine the feasibility and the economic costs in terms of treating and testing for it. And that's because taxpayers or water users are ultimately going to be the people who are going to foot the bill for any treatment or testing. Then we determine what are the health benefits if we proposed regulations, and so we have to then take those costs of different potential regulations and the benefits and say, we're setting this level where the benefits are going to outweigh the costs. And so we've gone through this process. We've completed each of those steps at a preliminary level right now, including testing our water supply, as has been mentioned. We have a pretty good idea of where PFAS is in our water. In the most recent round of testing, none of the water systems had those long chain, more dangerous ones above half of EPA's standard for PFOA and PFAS, which is 70 parts per trillion. So those longer ones were all below 35. In the first round, there were some that were higher, but those wells have been shut down and no one's using them now. There was the one in Oakland, which is in Burrillville, and there were also some that were around 35 that have also been shut down. And so far we've tested 100% of the systems that serve more than 10,000 people, 100% of the schools, and half of the small community water systems, which typically serve about 100 or 200, kind of small numbers of people. And DEM has followed up on our testing where we found high results, and they've tested 100 private wells near those public water systems with higher results. And we've provided a full list of our testing results in our written testimony that was submitted. We're now having that process, the process we're following is being reviewed by a technical advisory group. And I just want to emphasize that our technical advisory group is a group of experts on either science or engineering related to PFAS that we put together to evaluate some of the very specific, very technical questions about the work we're doing. And these are questions like, are we using the right methods to analyze PFAS in drinking water? Did we use the correct dosimetric adjustment factor, which is how we tell how concentrations in blood correspond to concentrations that you might eat? Or are the costs that we're looking at based on the most appropriate granular activated carbon treatment design for a given water system? So it's a very technical group that we've got giving us some advice. Some things that have been affecting our timeline and some of the resource issues are, for one thing, the fact that we've gotten done what we have in the past year. We've really been working over the last year pretty steadily at this. When you look at that Safe Drinking Water Act process, it's not easy. The Safe Drinking Water Act was amended in 1996 and this process was added. And since then, EPA has never developed an MCL or developed regulations for a new chemical that wasn't already regulated before 1996. And so they've never done this. And the fact we've been trying to do this and we've basically done this in a year, we're really proud of, I think is pretty impressive. especially given that we don't have the resources of a bigger state or of the EPA. And so it's important that as we go forward and do this, we also need to think about the financial implications for drinking water systems and consumers, and also there will be additional staffing needs to enforce a new MCL at Rhode Island, and so that's something we're concerned about moving forward. We're really proud of the work we've done. No other state has completed as thorough a risk assessment as we will have once this is final and public. Often those other states have done less with a lot more, and some of that is because I know we've been criticized for not being right among the very first states to move, but there are some advantages to not being first because we're building off the foundations of what other states have done. We can look at New Hampshire, for example, has done a bunch of things really well, but they left a giant hole which has caused them to get sued and created problems. And so we can look at, these states have done all of this really well, and we're going to work on these things that maybe they didn't do such a good job at. We believe that we're kind of in the middle of this stack where we're building off the foundation of others, but at the same time, others are going to build on top of ours. So when ours is done, I think ours will be the best, but hopefully it won't stay the best because other states can build on what we do. So overall, just in conclusion, Rhode Island feels it's really important to do this right, but we also feel it's important to do this quickly, and we hear that that people want this done quickly, and so we've really tried to strike the right balance between doing this as quickly as possible and doing this as thoroughly as possible, because obviously those things are kind of counter, it's one or the other, and we're trying to hit a balance. We're doing it thoroughly but quickly. And I think we've done a really good job of that. We're really proud of the work we've been doing, and I think once it all comes out, which will be soon, everyone else will also agree that we've kind of done a pretty good job of this. Just a few comments on some of the earlier questions. With regards to do they break down, they don't ever break down. These are kind of these forever chemicals. So when Dr. Slitt was talking about them being removed from the body, that's mostly you just pee them out. So you aren't able to you don't change them in any way, and the environment doesn't change them. That's why they're concerning, is because once they're in the water, eventually they might settle to the bottom, but they don't ever go away, really. Also, in terms of cancer, that was only seen in workers who worked in plants where they were generating PFAS. In general, for the health effects, the concerns are mostly among the general public and at the levels you'll find in Rhode Island. The concerns are slightly higher cholesterol, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but will potentially lead to a slightly higher risk of heart attack. Slightly smaller babies, which could also be an issue in terms of slightly lower survival rates for small babies, and also the immune problems. There's evidence that it makes it harder, harder to make antibodies or harder to keep antibodies from vaccination. And so those are kind of the concerns that we're seeing.